Hello, welcome to Big Bad Online, the 2 AMA with Harper and John Nittner. That's me. I felt very clever. Actually, I was not clever. Karen, my partner, was very clever, and she calling it the 2 AMA because it's 2 a.m. AMA, and then it was two people. I don't know. It's my finest work yet, and it's
It's not your work, though.
it's from someone else. Yeah, it's my finest work yet, and it's not mine. It's Karen's. Anywho, I'm Sean Dittner. You all know me, and I use he him pronouns, and I'm really excited to be here with my good friend John. Talking about stuff, talking about whatever. How are you this evening?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here too. It's always great to just chat and just in general in our lives when we get to hang out. It's always great. And when it's like, hey, do you want to do this for a con slide? It's like, well, yeah. I mean, I would want to do it anyway. So
Right. Well, but like also the also like our ability to schedule time and to see each other, like just to hang out, is so it's like so hard just to like make time to hang out that I
yeah,
feel like we have to do it. We have to like make it official
it gives us
sometimes.
a reason to
It
really,
gives
yeah,
a
exactly.
reason.
Hmm.
So if you're watching and you have questions that you want to ask us, please throw them in chat. And Ray, who is doing Twitch moderation, will relay them over here. I'm going to kick one off because I got a question that I want to throw at you, John, or a discussion rather. I want to open up, and that is Blades in the Dark is an amazing game. Everybody knows it's fucking phenomenal. But it has done something recently, or not recently. I've recently noticed a pattern in that it's actually developed. Like the book has not changed, but the game play has changed. And I think it's specifically developed because you've refined and improved the sheets that go along with it, which are the primary interface for play. So I want to throw some up and then get your thoughts on them. So here
Yeah.
is this is whoops, that's not right. Here is the first reference sheets. It's actually right before the release because like for some reason couldn't find the release sheets. But the first reference sheets for Blades right when it came out, or close right when it came out. We got a GM reference sheet, we've got a rules reference sheet for the players, and then a second rules reference sheet for downtime. All of it's still accurate. None of it's invalid. But if you look at the content, it's very densely packed in here. There's tons of useful information. There's names of stuff. There's all sorts of resources. And for the players, it's got all the bits that they want. Um, it's just called rules reference rather than players reference, but like we know that like this is the GM sheet, right? The next one, which is the player kit that came out a little bit after the game came out, immediately opens up with how do you make action rolls, right? It's like it says right at the top, simple rules review, and it steps you through it in this sort of list format, and it like focuses on the player, focuses on taking the action. And then the most recent one you just put out says scoundrel moves and has this beautiful flow chart and then tells you on the side how to interpret that chart, and GM moves and very similar. And I think I know some of the influences, but I would love to hear you talk about what you see as the development of the game and like how you think it's changed and how you think and what you've wanted to do with these sheets to sort of reflect that.
Yeah. Good question. I think the brief top level answer before we dig into the details is all of the sheets and the game um, itself uh, grew out of a process of watching play and kind of like absorbing what people were doing. And originally, that was the couple years of the internal playtest group. Um, and all of us kind of knowing what we wanted to get out of it, or at least had a vision for where we were headed. And then, like, just watching that and going, like, okay, we were doing it that last week we were doing it. I don't see that stuff written down yet.
Right,
somewhere.
right, right.
So I'm going to write some of
That's
that
how
code
Devil's
today.
Bargain started, right? You just
Yeah,
kept being like, "Oh, I'll give you a die if
you
this."
take a really bad deal. Yeah. Um, and so that process was just like most of the game design stuff that we've worked on too. It's like that process of kind of trying to clear your vision and have a strong direction, but then kind of see what happens and how far or close to that is what you've written, and what types of instructions do people need, what do they respond to more than this or that, and all of that stuff is super complicated, and you're never going to get there really. You're just going to like continue to refine it. And um, so the sheets, the book and the procedures and the stuff you need to play Blades came out of that whole process, and I felt like we got to a point where it was doing like the materials inside the covers were what you needed to make a type of a Blades in the Dark game happen at the table. And that includes like all the dials and stuff that the players mess with when you play, how
Yeah,
serious, how gritty, all that stuff that is up for grabs. um, and I think those first sheets looked the way they did because I felt like I kind of wanted everything in front of you, like I had
yeah.
my experience of kind of watching people play and learn the game was they sometimes would kind of like slide away from the stuff that's would help them and support them.
Mhm.
Maybe forget to use it, or just kind of not engage with the systems in the way that they might. And that's fine. Like that's role play. You're not going to always pay attention to every little detail. But I would notice these pain points. Sometimes somebody would post on G Plus or something and be like, this thing keeps happening. And someone else would go, yeah, well, that's why you use this mechanic. If you
That's
use
why
that
there's a
mechanic,
rule for that.
it won't happen anymore. And be, oh, right, I always forget that one or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's just normal. But as time has gone on and I've seen those pain points in different ways, what people tend to forget or what people tend to kind of gloss over or whatever, when there's a point of friction, like, is there a better way to present this material? And besides the like read the entire book, which is
Right.
the one thing, which I think that's a fair ask in general for RPGs, but like not everybody has time really. And if you're showing up to play in someone's game, the GM is supposed to kind of know all that stuff, and maybe you aren't going to absorb the
Yeah.
material that way. And the sheets, especially those first two sets that you showed, were definitely more for reference for people who did read the book and needed something in front of them to remind them, oh right, we should do more group actions. We're way better when we do group actions.
We
um,
get one more dice.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
um, and that, well, I guess the second set I did start to step away from that a little bit and say, okay, maybe I can make a sort of introductory sheet that you can give to someone instead of asking them to read the book to join your one shot or whatever.
Yeah.
You can just be like, here's a single page, um, so that you'll get some traction when you start playing, and you're not going to just be totally at sea and like, I don't know how to do this. um, and I think that was a good evolution in a practical sense. Like,
Mhm.
um, email that to the players the day before your game and say, just
Right.
just read this one sheet of paper, that's it. um, I think that's just more useful as a tool. But since that one's been out for a while, and I've gotten to watch some, I try to, like, when someone tweets about a Blades AP, I try to like at least jump over and watch 10 minutes or something if I can while I'm working, just to kind of hear them in the background and listen for that thing when they go, oh, is that, or wait, is it 6 minus the, and I'm like, okay, all right, I'm gonna just store that away, that thing that like, they had a little struggle there.
Yeah.
Or the groups that are like, dear GM, may I use this action roll? And then GM says, yes, you may. I
I
will let you.
grant you the permission from on high.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was gonna say, like, I don't know how you could like scrawl players choose the action
Well,
like in brighter ink or
it's
bolder
complicated
text.
too, because like I'm putting it on GMs, but really it's a group dynamic.
Yeah.
It's um, still treating them like skills. Like, what skill are you going to use here, instead of what's your character doing, like physically doing.
Yeah.
And you're not like, oh, I'm going to use rec as a skill because I can talk to this guy about weak points in a building, and so I'm using my
Right.
rec thing to like discuss this thing we know about. Like, that's where it starts to like veer away. If you're wrecking something, then you roll your wreck, and if you're swaying somebody, you roll your sway, and
Yeah.
um, so it is that group dynamic of if you fall back to that classic thing, like, GM, what skill check do I need to make? Then you do get into those weird cases where someone wants to tinker everything in the world, and if you treat it like a verb, then it's weird. There's no like weaseliness to it. You're just like, well, okay, but you're talking to him. You're not tinkering,
Yeah.
So you're not rolling tinker, obviously. So those kind of things, I think most groups like figure that out, and there's a kind of like friction there where they go, oh wait, we're not supposed to be doing it like that. Let's do it this sort of verb way. Um, but since I have been able to watch a couple um, Blades groups like more consistently, I've got like created this sort of rhythm where like me and my partner like have like our time set aside to like have a nice little happy hour together and watch this
It's so
Blade
lovely.
stream.
So
And
lovely.
instead of it being this disruptive thing like, oh, I need to watch this for work or something, um, that's let me watch a more consistent uh, series, and start to see like, okay, like they've developed some ways of talking about this that make it pretty smooth, or they're even this group, which is really highly polished, like they're still having this one little issue.
Hmm.
um, so I finally went back and looked at the sheets and was like, I think there's a better way to talk about this and get to it in a way that will maybe I was picturing like a video game controller, like the diagram of the
Yeah.
controller, and like hit A to jump and hit X to reload, and it was like, what is the scoundrel player's controller when you're playing, and what's the GM player's
Yeah.
controller map? And like, if you just need to do a thing, you could almost like press the box on that sheet
Right.
and
Right.
be
Right.
like,
I
do
could
do that.
I could just see the when one multiverse brings out their implementation. I could just see them literally making it like a box that you like you press it like daring action, cha-chung, and then like that
Mhm.
lights up and the other things fade. I mean,
Mhm.
I could see it like the video game implementation of it happening.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
I wonder. I think a lot of us have seen that apocalypse world diagram where they're like, you're gonna shoot somebody. What move are you doing? And it's like this, like, are you really gonna shoot them? Are you just pretending? Are you trying to do this? And it's like, is it seize by force? Is it act? Is it go aggro? Is it influence? Like what manipulate? Like what is it? And it's like this like big flow chart of if this then the other, and you go through these things. And I think like for someone who's like very unfamiliar with moves and like coming to a PBTA game for the first time, like that kind of flow chart is great. Like to help you kind of get like what are you doing? But you could also like look at the moves and going, well, what is it that you are trying to do in which of these moves? You like I don't think the flow chart is 100% necessary, but it struck me as one of those things where like for a little while at least that became like an interface tool because the game's text like the community reading the game's text like was using that to help like process it, and that became this sort of like unofficial, at least for a while, like intermediary tool, while the game itself wasn't actually changing.
yeah.
I feel like, you can tell me if you think it's right, it's true, like I feel like Blades actually changes when you do this. I feel like the game changes not because the mechanics change, but because of like people's approach to it and their understanding and the way they engage with it changes when you're actually evolving the game as you do it,
Hmm.
and making it more accessible to a different audience.
Yeah, that's one reason why I added in this newest one from last week the little reference note of what page it is in the book. So if you read the summary, yeah, they're little gray
It's
things
probably it's too small for me.
on the
Let's see if I
right.
can expand it.
Um, yeah, just as a way of saying like, hey, you if you've read the book, you've encountered this before. It's on this page. I've rewritten it here, but it's the same system. There's nothing different about it. Um, it's just kind of like maybe this encapsulation of it will be the thing that hooks you better than the other one or whatever. And I got a few replies on Twitter when I asked people for their critiques, and a couple people said like, "Oh, you didn't mention XYZ here in this set of options on this simplified sheet. So are those out of the game now? Did you throw them out of the game?" Which I can kind of see where they might be coming from there, but I had to say no. It's I didn't write this one piece of paper to replace the whole book uh, that I wrote. It's just a simplified way of going about it. And if you want the whole thing, then you have the whole thing already. Uh, Maybe just like try this simple way without having to use every single dial at all times, and
Right.
then over time, you can add more of those things and maybe get a little fancier or whatever. But um, I mean, honestly, there isn't much that isn't there. It's just more of a like I said, like that just here are like the six buttons to press.
Right. Right.
And there's also the one where you can hold the left trigger while you're hitting RB, and that does something else. But like we're not getting into that right now. You
I
can add.
I felt like you were reading my mind when you released it because I literally the couple days before was having a conversation with somebody developing a Forged Dark game. We were playing with the author of the books it is based off of, and the author was like, I loved everything. It was like emulating the fiction super super well until you started asking me, do you want to trade position for effect? And do you want a devil's bargain? And she's like, no, I just want to do the thing I want to do. Like, you tell me it's like desperate standard. She understood that. You tell me like add all these dice, like take my action, get a decision, understood that. But as soon as it was like, do you want to change this thing? Because like they sort of hard coded into their action roll, like trade, you can trade position for effect. And we got through the play test, and I was like, I don't think you should make that part of your action roll. I think that's part of the conversation. And like 99% of the time when you say that's risky standard, people are going to go, cool. Like it's only when someone goes, well, but wait, like how could I get more out of this? Or how could I like hedge my bets? It's only when somebody like pushes back that like you need to ask that question of, can I trade position for effect? And like, and you don't always need to offer a devil's bargain. Like people can ask for it if they feel like it, or someone could suggest one, but it doesn't need to be like every single time we do an action, say, do you want a devil's bargain? Right. Because those things, they just slow down the mechanics of it, but also they can kind of like derail the, like sometimes you're like perfectly, you have this perfect vision of what you're going to do. And then you're like desperately trying to find a devil's bargain, and like you like lose track of like what the hell you like, it like derails that, like the momentum of the game anyway. So we're having this conversation about like that shit's fine, but don't make it like mandatory. Don't like add that as like if someone wants it, and then you put this out, and it's like like that, like do that thing, that thing that John just beautifully made with these little buttons stuff. I don't know if you knew, but I was like psychically sending you.
I received your message
Thank you. I'm
in the
sure that's why
ether.
you did it.
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah. No, I
right.
think it's good. I think it's important. I think um, the design of the game was one that was very intentionally saying like you need to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
Here's a bunch of tools, and here's kind of the idea of what maybe get on the same page. But every session and down to every role, you're gonna be working stuff out, and that's kind of the point of it, is to have that ongoing creative project that you're all working on together, and you're never you're never out of it completely. You might develop those skills to have a shorthand, and like you said, like yeah, we can just go into these defaults. Like I know there's danger. It's probably risky standard most of the time. We can cut to the chase
Right.
and like streamline that a lot. But when we need to go, wait, hang on,
Yeah.
wait a minute. I no, I actually do. I'm not being. I'm being reckless right now, and I want to reflect my character's recklessness. Let's talk about that. Or whoa, I'm being super cautious and careful about this. I'm not just taking my chances.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that. And then you can get into more of whatever you need to get into. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that is like it's just like that reminder that this is like the conversation, and like a lot of times we can and should take our first instincts and just like go with it. Like yeah, I'm firing my guns, they're firing back, cool, it's risky, like we don't need to, it's not until you have those moments like that that you need to stall everything.
Yeah.
So we got a question from chat. What made Blades publishable versus say Lady Blackbird? Both were very, very well received. I have thoughts on this as your publisher, but let's let
Go
you go
go
first.
ahead. Go ahead.
Like Lady Blackbird, amazing game. I love it. I will still play it any day of the week. Works extremely well as a PDF for download, but to make it something that would like be printed in a book, there would just like physically need to be more to it, and that could look like more in a couple different ways. One way would be, because Lady Blackbird is part one. There's 3 parts out now that John has released. So we could combine all of those, and then we could maybe create more. Like we could try and accumulate enough stuff to create a book, and that would be one way of doing it. The other thing, which is a way we've talked about and might still happen, is go the opposite direction and actually make it less bound by like a conventional book and sheets, and be like card driven, and have like a cool little mini of the owl, and have like a nice rollout map, and like really like embrace the one shottiness, embrace the everything's ready to play, embrace the pre-generated characters way of doing it, which is I think like the way that like tightens what it's all about even more. But it'd be a very different game. It wouldn't be this 360 page book. It would be maybe a pamphlet or some like really condensed like board game size instructions. It would look a lot like a lot of the games that Heart of the Unicorn make, right? Where they're like way more focused on the components, and the components are telling themselves
Yeah.
than the rules text, right? Like the
Kind of
rules
like the
text
way
would be
that
better.
the Fiasco box set took
Yes.
what was a book and turned it into kind of like a play
Yeah.
kit or
Yeah.
I think
And
that would be a really good form for it.
Yeah.
And that could happen someday.
Right. And the answer to that is shipping non-books is super expensive. Developing anything overseas right now is super, super fraught. I mean, it wasn't as fraught pre-pandemic, but like there's like a lot of different logistical things that would go into doing that than versus book. Not to say that it couldn't happen. I still like. Still got my ask her. I still have my eye on that. I still want to.
My old school, somewhat snarky answer, which I know I'm not trying to like be super pedantic about this person who asked the question, because I know what they meant, but just to say it,
Yes,
is that I did publish Lady Blackbird. I published it as a PDF on the internet. And that is publishing. And if you do it, you're publishing your games, and you don't need anyone else's permission. You can just do it. So I totally know what the question asker meant. They meant doing it like the way that Blades was done. But I just want to say that to anyone listening, that you are publishing your games if you're putting them on itch as digital games or whatever. That counts.
All right. Just to be fair to the folks that okay, now how's my mouse gone out? This is delightful. I think
is your mouse dead?
I think my mouse just died. Fun, fun, fun. Okay, well, cool. So I won't click on anything. So Ray, who is Twitch modding right now, I will ask you to dual class Twitch/Discord mod, and go into Discord, because there's a channel we put in there where we could have people could ask questions and maybe grab. I was gonna go like alternate
There,
between
I,
chat
I
question.
saw one in the comments here that was if you could throw something out of the game. I think referring to Blades.
Yeah, I was
What,
going to skip that one because I
what would
feel
it
like
be?
that's a trap question. But if you want to answer it, go for it.
Oh yeah, we can skip it. That's fine. I don't need to. I just didn't know if you'd seen it. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like people often ask people like, so what's the one regret you have, or what's the one like, and I don't think people necessarily mean it maliciously, but I'm just like, I want to celebrate the good stuff, and not think about the things I would throw out. But if it's yeah.
I wouldn't throw anything out, Blades, but I think the way that people use harm in a lot of groups
Mm,
is troublesome for them, and they don't like it. They don't enjoy it, uh, and so I would like in my own other Forge in the Dark, designs.
yeah,
Harm is something that I almost always kind of start with, and I'm like, okay, I've seen how people kind of don't apply this the way that is in a way like. And I'm not saying there's one bad way to use harm or one good way to use harm. It's just like groups have disconnects with it sometimes, and they don't adjust the dial. They just go, this sucks.
right.
So I've tried to find other ways of getting there in explanation or in system to like help people either be better at turning the dial or just
Find a different
take
dial.
out the dial and just give like this other version that's going to hit land
Yeah,
differently.
I've heard you talking a little bit about your blades sort of 2.0 type harm tech, and it sounds
Yeah, for Sparrow's Folly, spoilers everybody, the western thing I'm working on with Alison Arth, there's some new ways of dealing with harm there. It's kind of the same mechanic. It's just a way of talking about it that I think will
yeah.
help people out.
I see a question, Sean. I love the Babylon Equity Project. Where did that name come from? Uh, I had to insert this question here because you just referenced Allison, the designer of Sparrow's Folly. Allison was also the person who helped us come up with the name Babylon Equity Project. Orion Black, who had the Babylon Discord server, so like already that was like a thing. This was back in 2019. Orion and I were working together to try and bring more BOCs to BadCon, and they said like we should do a fundraiser just for that, and I said absolutely, let's do it. And then we were looking, and then like we weren't sure if we were going to call it a big bad something or another, and we didn't really have a lot of direction. And Allison is actually like one of her many skills is um, helping people really like craft their creative vision. I've worked with her also like in developing the Big Bad Con code of conduct, and she asked us a lot of questions about like what is it that you want out of this, and where's the direction you're going. And it basically came to like this came from the like Babylon community, cool. And what the goal of the fundraising and to bring more people was to gain equity. And it was a project that we were working on, which means it has like a definitive beginning and end, like when it's done. And so like it sounds very simple now to just say we'll combine those things together, Babylon Equity Project, right? Like that sounds all just super elegant. Like this was after many revisions and changes and whatnot, but yeah, we just really just ended up combining those elements, and BOEP or Babylon Equity Project came very naturally from that. So it was great. It was really lovely to, and then because it's such a freaking small world, then John did all of the graphic arts, the graphic design, and for the logo and whatnot. So we had this gorgeous looking, very polished, professional BOEP design as well. So that was fantastic. Yeah. Uh, sorry, I took that one because I had the whole story on it. But what else have we got? Here, I'll throw this one to you, John. What are the most exciting directions in forged design that you're seeing right now?
Good question. There's a lot going on right now. I mean, there has been for a while. The Blades Discord, especially, is a hotbed of design work, um, and I since that started, so much stuff has been really cool and exciting coming out of that. Even things that are kind of closer to what Core Blades is, like Copperhead County. It's still like crime and
Yeah,
this sort of seedy underworld. But the things that Jason's done to tweak and change, and like the way downtime works is a little different. The way your relationships with people work is a little different. And those things, it on the surface, it's very, very similar to standard Blades, but then it does like justified
mm-hmm.
instead of Peaky Blinders. Just with those little changes, it just like turns it a little bit. So I'm always excited to see when someone is able to do that, to do something that kind of is part of the core, but has a different feel and flavor. And um, Sig City of Blades is another one kind of like that.
Yeah,
It's like crime and underworld and stuff, but in the planar multiverse kind of situation. And again, it has the way it deals with factions, the way it deals with those interconnected, the way your group is like in uh, living in this like strange mishmash of factions and powers is really cool, and that changes the gameplay a lot and changes the feel a lot. So I'm always excited to see that stuff, but in the last year or two, maybe the thing I've been seeing a lot of is really stripped down and simplified and very different Forge in the Dark
yeah,
interpretations that are like barely keeping much of anything. Like Caltrop Core is a whole other game SRD thing that takes like a couple things from Blades and uses that as the basis, and then has a couple other things on top of it, and that's like the whole system. And it's this like little lightweight thing. Or Crescent Moon, the Forge in the Dark game, uh, strips everything down to this really lightweight, easy to parse, easy to learn set of systems. Slug Blaster also does
yeah.
that. Kind of does some cool stuff with stress and removing harm in a way, and just having stress, kind of, but it's not even really stress. Um, it's this kind of like fun, um, kidsy adventure thing where you're just like striving and falling at and getting scraping your knee on your skateboard. And
It
um,
felt very Paperboy to me when
yeah,
when I was reading it. I was like, I remember playing Paperboy and then Nintendo. That was great.
yeah. And geez, there's so much
Yeah.
out there. I just yesterday or the other day finally looked at my copy of I want to get the name right. As the Sun Forever Sets, which is it's on itch, and it's like the tripods, the War of the Worlds, H.G. Wells, and you're the survivors of the initial Martian landing and the tripod machines wreaking havoc in Britain. And your team tries to survive. Your team, it's a group of survivors, tries to survive, and it's this big hex crawl of all of the UK on this giant map.
Wow.
And each route every day is straining your resources and stretching all your stuff thin and tiring you out and putting you in danger. And then you have to find these little nodes of safety to recover and try to make sense of things and not break mentally. And then the next day, it's your next route. You got to go the next leg of your journey, and what stuff do you need? And
Reminds me of a lot of the Band of Blades
it feels a little like
mission,
that. Hmm.
mission approach. Yeah, yeah. I've got. I mean, I'm very biased because I'm working on some of these projects, but I've seen two things that like have really excited me. Like in general, because I have like a publisher's eye on things. The things that tend to grab my eye are the ones that do deviate a lot. Because if someone makes like Copperhead County, like I think is like a great is a great implementation. But when it's a subtle change like that, it's much harder for us as a publisher to find like the marketing, like the brand, the space for it in our with our audience, right? Like we can say that's a fantastic game, but might not be able to like get enough of our audience to differentiate it from Blades, say, to grab hold of them. So I'm always, and this isn't to say like this is what you should do with Forged in Dark games, but like as a publisher, I'm always kind of looking at like who's taking Forged and really stretching it. And so two games that I think do something very, they both do the same thing, which is they take the crew structure, and instead of saying, well, this is what the crew is, we're still going to have a kind of a place for the crew playbook, but instead it's going to be like what's going on in the world, like what is the situation that we all live in. And the two that I'm very excited about are one, Girl by Moonlight, which as some folks have seen is like in layout now, is coming very soon because you have these different play sets. So you like have the difference between At the Brink of the Abyss, which is very hopeful, very like Sailor Moon, very like all the possibilities, versus Beneath a Rotten Sky, which is uh like very, you know, lane, very like everything sucks. It's all going to be terrible. Like you're complicit in this, and you're never going to fix it. You just have to see what kind of what you can salvage out of it, and the moves and the powers and like the way the play structure changes, like that sets the game. And a very similar game to that is Abyssal, which has three different play sets, like London 1888, Vegas 1973, Paris in the 18th century. I don't remember the dates, but it's like it's all like in certain times and places where cool things are happening, and like the world, like that frames so much of what you're doing. It's almost like they're like, we're going to have 3 or 4 games in a sense, but basically the way I find it. And then the other one that I'm just super excited about because I'm playing it right now, and I might be biased because Ray's hanging out with us in chat, is Twilight Throne in the House of Rune, where it's like, let's rip a ton of things out of Blades. Let's add elements in like your personal advantage, rather than have like these nobles have gears and something you worry about, but you do have a personal advantage like a dashing costume change. Or you know, a secret patron or something else, and you're doing, and you're watching as I'm playing in the Throne of Annihilation, which is where we're like watching, or we're like basically destroying all the houses that we know we're all doomed, and we're deciding whether we scavenge from them or whether we lead them to their doom. It feels very Gideon the Ninth to me, and it's just like. It's very exciting and fun, but like I also just love watching how some systems have just been completely ripped out, or others have just been like grown in these ways that like suit the narrative so well. So anyway,
Yeah, I'm very excited about that one too, and that reminded me of Sean and Navi Drake's work.
yes,
Which hesitate to even mention one because they have so many,
so many,
so many Forged in the Dark things.
yeah,
But they also do that kind of interesting work of either cleaving closely in a way like Court of Blades is
mm-hmm.
in the Forged in the Dark, skeleton framework, or being very different with these little lightweight, almost like little zine
Yeah,
games they've been doing. And it's amazing that they're able to just sort of like cover the whole spectrum.
Yeah.
That's been really cool to see their experiments
Skyworthy
there.
looks really, really fun.
Yeah,
I'm
Skyworthy. Very
really,
cool.
It's also just beautiful.
Yeah. There's so many. I keep an archive on itch of all the Forge in the Dark games that I have know about. So send me yours on Twitter and I'll add it. And I tweet it out periodically, but maybe we can provide a link or something for people who want to go look at everything that's out there, because we could spend the whole rest of this conversation on that.
Yeah, right. We absolutely could. So, oh my goodness, we have 10 minutes left. Wow. All right. Well, we are not going to get through every question, but I think so. This is a two-part question, and again, I don't really like to focus on the bad stuff, but I'm going to say the first part and then skip very quickly the second part. What parts of Blade or Agon's design are y'all least happy with? What was the hardest to crack in each design? I want to focus on that latter one. I think those are fun. That's a fun question. I don't know. I'm not least happy about it. I From my perspective, I love
Yeah,
these games. Right?
if you'd asked us that at Go Play, when we were
Oh
having
yeah,
our late night crisis of the soul about
Christ.
how the game had been torn apart and might never go back together again,
Yep.
we would certainly have a lot to tell you about what we were not happy with. But we solved those problems and we ended up with something that we loved. So yeah, the hardest things to crack. Yeah,
I think the hardest thing to crack in Agon was Strife.
yeah.
It was such a simple, fun.
Well,
Mm.
I have a different answer. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean that's great.
We just have to go fast. I know.
Okay, we got to go fast. So Strife was one of those things where we were very enamored with the divine favor also in re-rolling. So there was lots about the conflict mechanic in general that we knew we liked what we were doing, but the outcomes were very swingy, and also not only were they swingy at first, but then they also, like, because we initially allowed like divine favor to allow to rerolls or explode dice, they were unsatisfactory. They could you could think you had an answer and then find out it was a different outcome, and it could be very disappointing to find out like that you thought you won and you hadn't, or vice versa. And while those roles could be really fun, they often just sort of took the air out of your sail. They like took the excitement away. You're like, we figured it out. Oh no, it changes. And that, like, figuring out how we were going to like set the strife level and have the strife player roll, like that part we just hammered on over and over and over again. And it just really took a long time till we hit that level where it was predictably and reliably giving us not only like the level of challenge that we wanted, but also like the feeling where when you narratively walk through it, it matched our expectation and the mechanics weren't like sabotaging the fiction. Okay, that's my
Yeah.
2 minutes.
No, I would say that I think we do kind of have the same answer, because mine was going to be that the procedural like nightmare it was to have everybody roll, and then who talks first, who is making, because we had, like you said, we had these like post roll decisions in the game that we loved and we thought were really cool, and they were kind of cool. But because we had post roll decisions, which became this quagmire after the roll, and like, okay, we found out what happened. No, we haven't found out yet, because did you want to change your number? Yes. Okay. And now if you're changing your number, I'm going to change my number. And that whole thing was such a mess that we had to do this really painful work of like cutting out all of that stuff that we thought was fun about making those choices and after the roll. And once we like really cut, like we cut a lot
We cut
of stuff
so hard. We like, God, divine favor used to do like 6 things and now it does 1.
Yeah. It was, and it's before the roll, and once we got all that cleared, and it was just put as much in on the line as you want up front and say those things you want to say up front, but then you just roll and that's it. You find out, and man, and then I think it was your idea, Sean. The real like final little beautiful little touch was ordering the roll lowest to highest and giving that top player that final cherry on top of the narration that just made it all like really click together. And yeah,
I appreciate you giving me credit for it. I'm not sure that was me, but I like to think in some weird brains knocking together that we came to that, because that when I watch an actual plays and I see, especially when I see the whole gradation of like somebody suffered, somebody won, and then somebody was best, and like I see the person be like, Andronicus strives, but when he sees the beauty of the angel's wings, remembers his tragic backstory, and the harpies fly down, and we see him carried off, and it's like they like just, I just feel like people just like love describing their suffering pathos and struggling and suffering, and then you watch it as it progresses, and it's just so like it's so rewarding for me to see people just just really embrace it and dive into it.
I love there's an amazing Korean language actual play on YouTube
Oh yeah,
that does animations for their Agon series, and it is amazing. Like it's just a great piece of
yeah,
animated content on its own, but the way they dig into their narrations and their like orations and stuff is so amazing. I love it. I can't wait for the next. It's been a while since the last episode, but
yeah.
it's
They
so good.
they did
Um,
Vrachoy, which was like the hardest island for me to write. Like that
yeah,
island, I
they
had to
dug.
redo that island so many times, and the way they did it, I just chef's
It was
kiss.
like a vindication of all your hard work.
Yeah, it was.
They made that island like the coolest, best thing. It was so awesome.
It was so much fire. I loved it, and I think like they did it better than I could have possibly imagined. Yeah,
Yeah, it was awesome.
yeah.
There's so many twists and turns there, and the romance was amazing. And
I know.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. So the hardest part of Blade's design to crack was position and effect.
Yep.
Position and effect. I ran that together a little bit. Uh, it seems obvious now in hindsight, but there were like 11 different versions of that as the game developed, and I didn't even know what that needed to be at all. I just know it. I knew it needed something to, to juggle that. And I think if you go watch on my YouTube channel, there's a videos called A History of Blades. Me and Andrew, we go through old character sheets and talk about old designs, and you'll see these hilarious like ladder diagrams of like risk and reward, and you're like moving up these ladder rungs in different ways, and all it was all this stuff that just was so hard to figure out.
It
And
was the Thaco of Blades.
yeah, it was. It was.
Yeah, I remember having one of those late night go play conversations about effect when like it was back when they were separated. So you'd roll position and then you roll effect separately. And like yeah, just like going back and forth. And it wasn't even like this was like somewhere very much in the middle. You know, it was like it changed. Like we talked about it and then you changed it. I don't think necessarily because of that conversation, but like you were also working on it and then you changed it. And I was like, oh yeah, and then changed again. And you know, yeah.
It took so much to get to something like useful, and actionable, and simplifying it down as much as I could to just like the because it's like it's three things, but it's kind of two things. There's like the middle is kind of invisible, and like we were saying before, like you can kind of take it for granted. If you're rolling, it's risky, right?
Right.
So it kind of cheats in a way, and like really, it's just like art. Is it going this way or further that way? And otherwise, you just stay in the middle. Um, but yeah, man, that was such a mess to get to. Took forever.
All right, we've got to wrap up. Let's do a rapid fire. A rapid fire. Oh, we have like 1 minute. Okay, never mind. I was going to do
All right.
rapid fire questions, but I think we'll just do outros. I don't want to learn anything from Mercy Keel. She's a disaster. I hope my life does not look like hers. She's a lot of fun to play, but yeah.
Oh my God! Hi, Kira. Hello.
Hey, let's sign out, and then Tracy will kill it for us. I'm Sean. You can find me on Discord. I'll be there and everywhere at Sean Nittner. It's been so great talking to John right now and being part of Big Battle Line. I've been loving it. How about you, John? Where do we find you?
I'm John_Harper on Twitter, and just John Harper all together on Mastodon. I'll also be in the Discord, hanging out for a while. So I'll see you all over there.
All right. Take care, all. Thanks for hanging out.